What does $12 billion, MailChimp, Intuit, and you making money all have in common? Well, let's get into it in this week in M&A. Hey, what's up everyone? It's Greg Elfrink here, and I'm coming at you with my second ever This Week in M&A video. Let's see how it goes, but today we're discussing the acquisition that Intuit just recently did with MailChimp for a smoking $12 billion. That's a big number with a big capital B. I cannot do B with my hand, sorry. Anyhow, if you're wondering why my setting is different again, I am no longer in Mexico or Vegas, whichever video comes out first. I am now in San Francisco at the moment, meeting up with my friend and a few other networks in my personal network. But I wanted to get this video out here. Hopefully the angles aren't too crazy in this hotel room for you. It took me a bit to actually set this up, but let's get into what the meat of this video is going to be, all about the bolt-on acquisition strategy that Intuit just performed on MailChimp. Now, if you haven't seen my other videos, which I'll be referencing later, definitely recommend you go check out. But we're going to be discussing what this means for the industry. Why did Intuit do this? Why did they spend $12 billion to acquire MailChimp? And ultimately how you can use a very similar strategy of what Intuit has done in your own business, no matter what level you are as an entrepreneur. Let's get into it. So on September 30th, 2021, MailChimp was acquired, which is a bootstrap company that owns about 72% of all email marketing for small businesses, by Intuit, which is famous for owning things like QuickBooks or TurboTax. This happened because Intuit had a multi-bet strategy. In fact, they had 5 bets, 5 main areas of growth that they thought MailChimp could help them out with. 2 of those areas is Center for Small Business Growth and disrupting that small business to mid-business market level by combining what MailChimp offers with QuickBooks. What's interesting here, and I'm not going to cover too deep on it, one of the reasons why MailChimp was selected by Intuit is because Intuit is looking to become an AI-driven platform, and MailChimp already has a bit of that built in. Now, I'm not quite sure what they're going to do when it comes to this, but when it comes to their big bets, this makes a lot of sense. This is a great marriage, if there ever was one, when it comes to the bolt-on acquisition strategy. And if you haven't seen my bolt-on wealth videos, I'll put a card up here or later in the video, and you should definitely check that out, because if maybe you already have and you're wondering, does this really work? Do people really do this? Well, this is a grand slam example of big businesses doing the bolt-on wealth strategy. Now, if you don't know what the bolt-on wealth strategy is, the basic premise of it is 1 + 1 = 4. And what I mean by that is you as an entrepreneur go and find something that has strategic value to what you're already doing, and you go and acquire that business. And once you integrate it, which is a problem big businesses have, but you as a nimble entrepreneur probably won't have as big of an issue with that. Once you integrate that asset you acquire, you will be able to go and spread your wings, so to speak, and start building a much bigger business much faster. Some businesses, one of their main ways of growth is by acquiring other brands, other assets that once they integrate it within the ecosystem of their business, they can really explode. And in this case, it is pretty obvious what is happening here. Intuit has all the accounting of so many small businesses with their QuickBooks service, and even with the tax service, TurboTax, though I think that is lesser to a lesser degree, less valuable. But with QuickBooks, they know what kind of businesses are, what businesses are doing in general. But when you add MailChimp to that, you collate all that data that MailChimp has, which the vast majority of MailChimp users are also small business owners. That right there is a huge bump right away for Intuit's QuickBooks service, and vice versa. QuickBooks can do a whole promo on, hey, get your marketing set up with MailChimp, and that is going to be a huge setup for MailChimp as well. And this is just the basic bump of the kind of integration that is probably going to go on here. The real value is the audiences, which I kind of already described, but I want to describe one aspect of that value. The other aspect is the fact that MailChimp and QuickBooks have an insane amount of data. They are going to be able to cross-reference their customers' data at all sorts of different segments. For example, they'll be able to now see, all right, a MailChimp user that has, this big of a list, that it sends this much email, usually has this much in revenue, right? Once they get these two sources of truth combined into one source, that's going to help them build out a much more robust segmentation engine for their marketing. So not just the audiences that currently exist, but using that audience's data to actually grow the market share overall. And this is something I actually have talked about. In fact, I talked about it recently on my LinkedIn. If you don't follow me on LinkedIn, I'll put a link down below, a link to my LinkedIn, that you can go and connect with me and hang out with me on LinkedIn. But one of the things I said, if you want to build something long-term, you really got to focus on audience, then data, then net profit, then revenue. Revenue is almost like an afterthought. It doesn't really matter. Really what matters is audience and data. And for bootstrap entrepreneurs, profit obviously matters a lot if you don't have a big runway. Revenue, usually that's like a cocktail vanity metric in my view for most bootstrap entrepreneurs. But this is exactly what Intuit is doing. They're getting a big audience. So already they're going to get those bumps on both sides of the acquisitions, but then they also get all that data. Could you imagine, if you ever ran Facebook ads, you built lookalike audiences, all that kind of stuff, could you imagine the kind of segmentation that these two giants, when they combine that data, can do? It's absolutely next level kind of stuff. It's every marketer's dream and every normal person's nightmare to the kind of data you can target with that kind of acquisition once it's integrated successfully. So I have no doubt that at least on these two of the 5 big bets that Intuit has set for itself with MailChimp's growth, I have no doubt that they're going to do a really good job. I think they really are going to clinch that market of the small business entrepreneur market, as well as be able to use that data for disrupting the mid-market. Because when you combine both accounting and marketing data combined, that is a recipe for disruption if I've ever seen one. Now, this all sounds absolutely awesome, right? Like Intuit just did a home run spending $12 billion, and the founders of MailChimp, good on them, they're bootstrap entrepreneurs. At least I'm pretty sure they were bootstrap entrepreneurs when they sold. So they just went to next level wealth themselves. So all of this sounds hunky-dory and fantastic, but there are problems. And I'm going to get into some of the pitfalls of the bolt-on wealth strategy here in just a second. But before I do, I want to dive into how you can take this information that probably sounds cool to you and actually apply it to your business so you can actually make money off of the lessons from Intuit acquiring MailChimp. So again, all they're doing is a big version of the bolt-on wealth strategy, a bolt-on acquisition. So let me describe just a few scenarios how you can do something very similar. If you are an Amazon FBA entrepreneur, instead of going out there and spending a bunch of money testing new products in your niche to see which one works, if you have a little bit of background in SEO, you might be better served by going and buying a content site that's already making money monetized through the Amazon Associates program. Because the cool thing with Amazon Associates is every time you make a sell, Amazon will tell you what you sold and how much of it did you sell. So you can go and acquire a content site to act almost like your little R&D laboratory to figure out what kind of products you should launch. And instead of spending money on research, you're actually getting paid to do that research. You're getting that information front line and center, so you absolutely know what you should sell next that is related within your niche. And you can use that content site, not just the data, but the actual audience from that content site to start building an off Amazon email list. And as all my FBA entrepreneur friends know, building an email list sucks in the Amazon FBA business model. It's really hard to do. So if you have a content site that is getting a ton of SEO traffic, you can put a lead magnet, you can do something, start building a community that doesn't rely on Amazon being the first point of contact with your customers, so you can own that customer data yourself, which is extremely important as entrepreneurs. That should be one of the #1 things you do. No matter what kind of business you're in, you should eventually be getting whatever traffic you have to be joining an email list or a community or something that you can really control. So that's an example of what you can do right now. And there's a bunch of other examples out there. For example, if you're running a SaaS business, again, maybe you want to buy a content site, or Or maybe if you're an Amazon FBA owner, you want to buy another FBA product in a very similar niche as you that you know you can combine them together by promoting each other in the package or your customer list or whatever, right? So as long as you're buying something that is at least somewhat related to what you do and you integrate it appropriately with a good plan, this can be a huge win for you. Now, I say good plan, and most people don't have good plans. So Intuit, it sounds like they had a pretty detailed plan of what they were going to do, which I hope so. I mean, they just spent $12 billion, right? They better have a plan. But when you go and buy a business to bolt onto yours, you should also have a plan, because I mentioned earlier about integration issues. Now, this isn't a big issue when it comes to you, the audience member, because usually the type of businesses you're going to be buying are going to be simpler than, say, a MailChimp. But as you get bigger and bigger, your systems in your company, your processes, your employees, pretty much everything becomes more complicated and more nuanced to the point where you probably don't know the ground level floor anymore of the processes that are even going on at your company. And this is very normal. And this is what leads to the M&A integration problem, where a big company buys another big company and they're not aligned, they didn't have a good plan, and they're just butting heads and nothing happens and the whole deal was worthless. And this is why some founders think acquiring assets is a really bad move, because it has a track record of failure. And the failure usually isn't in the deal, it is in the plan, and specifically how you integrate that asset into what you're already doing. So to boil it back down to you, if you are an Amazon FBA entrepreneur, don't just go buy a content business because of what I just said. Go buy a content business because you have a SEO plan or an SEO background, or you know how to hire in that field, because that is a very important traffic source for a content site owner, right? Know a little bit about how to run a website, or know how to hire someone who can, right? Have an integration plan, not just an overall strategic plan when you go and do a bolt-on wealth type of strategy. And that's going to serve you very, very well. It's going to make everything much clearer on what comes next after you do the deal, because there's usually that, all right, I got to find a deal, I acquire a deal, and then there's like, okay, integration, I guess, and then there is the strategy, right? This is the strategy you have. Here's the strategy you have to buy and negotiate the deal, but the actual integration part is the part that is usually missing. I don't think Intuit is going to mess this up because they are very, very smart people, but it is worth you having a similar plan as Intuit. What are your big bets when you go and acquire a business? What is your overarching strategy, but get even more granular? How are you actually going to integrate what you acquire into the business you're already running? All right, let's talk about some of the risk. And I already kind of mentioned, and that is acquiring brands that are not directly related to what you do. Now, maybe you sell shoes and then you go buy a social media software. Seems like a weird move, right? And maybe it won't be. Maybe there is a commonality here you can think about. But the biggest mistake people make when it comes to growing a portfolio of wealth generating businesses, these wealth engines like an online business can be, is usually they think, oh, I need to diversify, and therefore I'm going to buy one content site, one FBA business, a SaaS business, and a service business, and they're all in completely unrelated niches. You just basically became a startup entrepreneur 5 times over, and you're probably going to lose all your hair from the stress that you've just now entered into the ring with, right? You don't want to do that. You don't want to buy something that's completely unrelated. You want something that is at least similar, right? And you want something that can have a long-term plan. Now, you can buy a business that on the surface seems unrelated if your long-term plan makes sense. Let me give you an example. So let's say you run an agency, a marketing agency, right? So you go buy a marketing SaaS business for local businesses, let's say, but that SaaS and marketing agency, they work together, right? That is an obvious sign of the intersectionality of what you're trying to do, right? But there is a third part to this element where where you are trying to buy local businesses and get minority stake or maybe even full on acquisitions of these local businesses, because you know with your marketing jobs, you can take it to the next level, but you don't want to start it from scratch. You want to have something that is already proven itself in that local market. So the long-term play here between the marketing agency and the SaaS isn't the fact that these two can shoot off customers to each other and self-promote each other, but really it is for you to see what kind of businesses your customers are running that are running it successfully, and you use that as an M&A lead gen for yourself. That is the long-term play, because both of these are getting these customers. So really your marketing agency and SaaS business, while yes, they are helping each other a lot, they are really acting as kind of a lead gen for your real goal, your long-term goal of owning a portfolio of local businesses that you can just dominate with internet marketing, right? I just saw a speech in DC, Mexico, all about this kind of concept about how us internet marketers, if we went local, we can just absolutely dominate the market, which I 100% agree with. And I just think it's a really cool idea. Hence why this analogy came up in my head. All right, so that's the basics of what happened. MailChimp got acquired for $12 billion. Those founders' lives are changed absolutely forever. One thing to note on this, the employees at MailChimp sounded like they were pretty peeved about everything, because the founders actually had said, hey, we would never sell our business, right? So because of that, and now they have sold their business, there is a bit of that feeling of betrayal that the employees have. And I don't know the full story there, but this is another good lesson for you as an entrepreneur. A lot of entrepreneurs are like, oh, I'll never sell, I'm going to the moon, or I will definitely 100% sell. This is just to get money, right? And we don't really want to say either of those things as an entrepreneur, because the business landscape is volatile. You never know what is actually going to happen, what is down the road, what kind of opportunities are down the road. And if you don't want to end up in a similar situation as the founders of MailChimp, with their team kind of annoyed with them, or in some cases extremely pissed with them, then just be honest with your team. If your team says, hey, are you going to sell? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I don't want to take it off the table, right? You never know when you might sell something, whether it's a minority stake or the full shebang, to get that big exit that you've been looking for that brings you to the next level, right? So just always be honest with your employees when it comes to that kind of stuff. And also, this is a great example of what is possible when it comes to being a bootstrap entrepreneur. MailChimp has been around for years. Since I got started in internet marketing, MailChimp was already a thing, and they were already growing. And they are a great example of what you can become if you don't just go growth all the time, raise a bunch of debt financing, all that kind of stuff, and just go hardcore growth. This is a great example of what you can become if you balance that profitability and growth, which is something that entrepreneurs can often struggle with. So many people are obsessed with growth, and growth, in my opinion, is often something that can kill a business just as easily as not making money, because often growth entails lowering your profit margin and therefore lowering your your margin of error, right? If a mistake happens, you have this much margin instead of this much margin, you're in a tougher spot to pivot and to adapt and to grow in the marketplace. So MailChimp, they were able to straddle that. So I think that is awesome. I think that should be a huge inspiration for entrepreneurs just like you out there, of what is really possible when we take our little online businesses and grow into something significant over a period of years. And also, I think this is a perfect example of a bolt-on acquisition strategy, a bolt-on wealth strategy that I think should be inspiring. I mean, the amount of data, the amount of audience that both of these brands are now going to go receive, as long as the integration part actually works, is going to be huge. It's going to be a magnitude unlike what we have seen, at least recently in the business world. Recently, HubSpot also acquired The Hustle, but that I would consider a very low version of what Intuit just did, because once they combine all the QuickBooks data with all the MailChimp data, I really do think that their big bets are going to pay off big. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video this week in M&A. There will be another video coming at you soon. If you haven't yet, make sure you like and subscribe and leave me some comments. What do you think about this? What do you think about Intuit taking over MailChimp? Do you think things will change? Do you think that they're going to do good on the integration or not? Let me know down in the comments below. I'll talk to you later. Bye.